You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi, thanks for coming back again to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, and I'm recording this from a place called Surplus Pond in Maine. It's about 7 o'clock at night. The sun's gone down behind the mountain. You can hear bullfrogs every now and then, sometimes way too close and noisy. But it's a very atmospheric place to be. Obviously, I'm hoping to see some moose. And if I do, I'll probably interrupt the recording and take a picture. But this is a glorious evening. Quiet and, as I say, very atmospheric. We're in Maine now. And I want to tell you the story about the last 3 days, or actually the days before this one. There's a bullfrog. The day number 158. Day number 158. US Route 2, which is in Gorham, mile 1893.7 to Gentian Pond Shelter, mile 1905.5, an 11.8 mile day. And my first day back after spending 3 days with Gary and Cathy. I came back, I took 3 zeros, and I came back kind of confident that I was feeling better. And frankly, I think I probably overdid it and should have taken a 4th day. But that's kind of the way it goes. And Gary and Cathy took me back, and there were hugs all around when we finished, and not when we finished, when they dropped me off. And they were so darn kind. I know I said it last time, but really, this is real trail magic, and I loved spending time with them, and I thoroughly enjoyed just getting better, and they were the perfect people for me to meet at that time. And because it was my first day back, I was very grateful that it was a beautiful day and it wasn't pouring with rain, and I got into it immediately with a bit of a lung buster up Mount Hayes. There was lots of walking on granite at the top with several false summits, and I relished it really. And those early hours, I was really going well and really hiking well, actually. And I was by myself. You should know that Trigger had only taken 2 zeros and had gone ahead and done 17 miles in that first day. There was no possibility I was going to get anywhere near 17 miles. He'd actually let me know that morning that he decided he wanted to hike with me. So he's only going to go 4 miles that day. So that would have been 21 miles from Gorham. So I was going to take 2 days to do 21 miles. And that would get me at Full Goose Shelter. And Full Goose Shelter is the shelter just before Mahoosuc Notch. The Mahoosuc Notch I will describe later because we did it together. But that was his plan, and so I had a couple of days to get there, and that was what I intended to do. As I say, there was a lot of walking on granite at the top, and I really, really enjoyed it up there. And then the AT actually certainly tends to follow different local trails, and we hit the Mahoosuc Trail and dropped down again before climbing again, and more views from granite slabs at the top. I met a listener, Rosie, who is through hiking with her husband, Samwise, and by now I was starting to get tired, and I'm not sure what it was. Maybe I'd pushed myself a bit too much with those uphills. But suddenly I hit a bit of a wall, and I thought to myself, I'm going to struggle here to make even 10 miles. And I didn't really know what I was actually going to do. But I kept on going, and I passed a couple of alpine lakes, and including Gentian Pond before dropping down to the shelter. When I got there, frankly, I was exhausted. I just put my pack on the side and just slumped in the shelter. Very nice shelter, actually. Oh yeah, one thing I'd forgotten. I actually had my 33rd fall number 33. Wasn't a bad one. About half a mile before the shelter, and it was just, frankly, it was a tired one. I was thinking to myself, I've done 10 miles and I am thoroughly exhausted. But of course, I hadn't done anything for 3 days. I was on antibiotics and I was also on steroids, and the steroids did not agree with me at all. I just had an awful time with them. And in the end, I decided to come off those and take some other stuff. And you can hear me now. I'm still not quite right. I mean, I'm actually recording this on, I think it's a Monday. So three or four days later, after this Friday. And so I think I'm getting better, but it's a slow process. And so I think that fall, number 33, was just a reaction to just getting tired. I think my balance is back again, so I'm okay with that. I'm quite comfortable. Anyway, I was chatting away with this section hiker, and later friends turned up, and we were just chewing the fat, as they say. And they told me there were some tent pads up and behind the shelter. And I really, really like my tent pad. I'm using my flex poles again, and they work so well on the tent pad. And it was fine, and I'm kind of cozy in there, and I do enjoy my tent, as you know. We access water from the pond, which I don't particularly like doing, but frankly, that was the only alternative. So I accessed my water from the pond, and that was another beautiful spot to sit down there in the sunshine as the sun went down behind the mountain. Of course, as soon as the sun went down, it got cold. So I went back into my tent and I slept very well that night indeed. So that was my first day back. I feel pretty good about it. Could have done better. I probably should have delayed it another day. But then I was one step closer to Mahoosuc Notch and one step closer to Katahdin. So that is the end of day number 158. Day number 159. Gentian Pond Shelter, mile 1905.5, to Full Goose Shelter, mile 1915.1. Just a 9.6 mile day, but I've got to tell you, it was a tough day for me. I actually made it even tougher by going south from 0.3 of a mile before I realised I was going totally the wrong way. I don't know, sometimes I shock myself about how dumb I can be. I got out of the shelter, I set off like a train, started going uphill, and I realised I've been this way before. So I thought I'd check my gut hooks, and Gentian Pond Shelter, instead of being 0.3 miles behind me, was in fact 0.3 miles in front of me, which means I was going the wrong way. So that was easily rectified. I went back down again and hopefully avoided the embarrassment, which I did actually, of bumping into anybody else to let them know I'd gone the wrong way. We went up Mount Success once I was headed in the right direction, and the summit is a ridge that has a combination of granite slabs and alpine bogs. I felt very free and alone up there. I liked it, you know. I've really enjoyed hiking with Trig. I thoroughly have. He's been great for my hike. He's really kept me accountable. But sometimes hiking by yourself does not suck. You know, I think that getting out of New Hampshire and certainly getting into Maine, I'll tell you about getting into Maine in a minute, Maine seems so much more remote than New Hampshire. New Hampshire always appears to have roads around. You can always get somewhere. Maine is terribly remote. And in fact, after about 5 miles in, I crossed into Maine, which is the last state. And I thought about it, you know, I set off on this trip in nearly 6 months ago, February 26th. And I started on that little scrub, I always used to call it, that scrubby little path up to Springer Mountain. I'm still on that trail. It's incredible, don't you think so? You know, you go down all these paths. You've gone through North Carolina, you've gone through Tennessee, the huge Virginia and the Virginia Triple Crown. Obviously Harper's, it was great being at Harper's. And then there was Maryland, because Harper's is in West Virginia, Maryland and Pennsylvania, and the rocks of Pennsylvania, how much I hated those. Still on that same trail. And then in quick succession, all those other states that started coming in, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut and all that. And suddenly I'm in Maine. Now I see the map, and I see the journey I've taken and walked the whole distance. It's an extraordinary distance. It really is. And I'm so pleased to have done it. And the fact that I've crossed into Maine, I'm looking forward to finishing, but at the same time, I kind of don't want it to be over in some ways. Tough to put that into words. And I'm going to think about that more as time goes on. There's a couple I've been hiking around for some time, and as I crossed this into Maine, this couple called Better Together, a lady called Britta and her husband Jim, were there with a guy called Hugs. And they've been hiking together now for, I think about since Damascus, something like after the first 300 miles. And Hugs is a really nice guy. He's a vet and he's got a dog, and I'm going to talk with them later actually. And Better Together and Hugs, they're really nice people, and we were chatting and took pictures and so on. I think Jimmy got a little bit injured. I think actually at the end of this day, I think he fell off a tent pad, which isn't funny, I know, but he was suffering with it. And I think all of us now are feeling a little bit beaten up by the whole thing. Anyway, there was a lack of water on this day, and at Carlo Coll Shelter, we all went 0.3 miles, another 0.3 miles out my way, having gone south for a while this morning. I went another 0.3 miles down to the shelter to get some water. And frankly, there's no real choice. You need the water, you got to get it. The source was good, and we all filled up on water, so that was okay. And really, I've not been good recently in getting water, and I find myself struggling a bit at the end of the day, and maybe it's tiredness, but maybe it's I'm just not having enough water. We then went up another climb, obviously, and I was still around Britta, Jim, and Hugs, and there was another alpine bog higher up, and I remember some great pictures I had taken here. So I took some good pictures of Britta walking through it, and she got some of me as well. Hopefully they're going to come out well. It's it's great walking through these alpine bogs. You're on these wooden trestles, I guess, these wooden, long wooden strips, and you try to walk and try not to fall off and put your feet in the bog. But it's lovely. There were 3 Goose Eye Peaks, west, east and north. Great views all around. They weren't very big descents, to be fair, and I didn't find them that difficult to do. But once again in the afternoon, I was getting tired, and we descended into down towards Full Goose Shelter. And as I was going there along, I suddenly heard, "Mighty Blue!" And it was Trigger. He was sitting on the tent pad, waiting for me, saving the tent pad for me, which was so nice. I was so pleased because there were plenty of people at the shelter, including a bunch of 8th grade girls, and just tons of people turned up. In the end, I think there was something like 20 people at the shelter, maybe even more actually. And while I'm going to talk, there's an interview I'm going to play in a minute with this guy Hugs. Just to let you know, we were expecting a lovely dry night, and of course it poured in the night. But what do you expect? Now let's listen to Michael Thorpe, who's Hugs, and talking about him and his dog Fecto. And by the way, that is the end of day number 159. Well, we're we're just before Mahoosuc Notch, and I'm sitting on a tent pad or tent site with Michael Thorpe and his dog Fecto. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. I'm very good. Today was a pretty hard day, but
it certainly was, wasn't it?
It was. We made it though, and things are pretty great right now.
Yeah. Now you're hiking the trail, obviously, and you've been this way before, haven't you?
Yes, I haven't made it this far, though, no. But in 2017, I attempted a through hike and made it all the way up to Salisbury, Connecticut from Georgia.
And then what happened?
So I've been diagnosed with PTSD from being in the military. I had 3 combat tours, and it took a toll on me. And so when I started to get up towards Connecticut, I started to have really bad sleep issues and panic attacks while I was on the trail. And it really took a toll on me. I just wasn't having fun anymore. And then some news came down to where I found out my grandma was passing away, and I made the decision finally to get off trail.
Right. So, and then your life changed.
Yes, my life changed, and
he's just licking your face.
Yeah,
in fact,
he's licking my face right now. He's cleaning me, hoping there's food up there. I'm sure.
Yeah.
But no, I came across. Well, I went to the VA. And they had recommended service dogs, and the unique thing is I'm allergic to dogs, or was allergic to dogs. Yeah, so they
it's not helpful, is it?
No, not at all. And I'd have asthmatic symptoms from being around dogs. So the VA had recommended me getting allergy shots, And I was like, okay, let's do that. So started receiving allergy shots, did my research on service dogs and organizations that train service dogs, and
Sure.
I came across an organization called PAWS, which stands for Paws Assisting Wounded Warriors, PAWWS.
Yeah.
And I had contacted the founder, whose name is Pam,
Yeah.
and she contacted me the very next day, and probably within a week of talking to her, I was in for training for handlers training for the dogs.
So tell us how that works. You have to train as a handler for Fecto.
So with how the organization works, and
Right.
this isn't every organization,
Right.
but they require a 6-month handlers training, and they go through the whole 9 yards of how to groom your dog, how different types of leashes, different types of collars,
Sure.
first aid of a dog, and of course how to handle a service dog and commands, stuff like that.
Sure.
So after you go through your 6-month training, you go to what you finally get paired up with your dog,
Right.
and then
Was Fecto your first one?
Fecto was not my first one.
Oh, right.
That's another story.
All right. Right.
So to back up a little bit, so I was coming up to the time where I was going to get paired with Fecto, and I went to
sure.
Pam, and I was like, hey, I've been receiving these allergy shots. Can I see if the allergy shots have been working? So she
Yeah.
let me take home a dog for a week.
Right.
Well, a week turned into a lifetime now.
Right.
And so that the dog's name is Mama Carol. So Mama Carol was actually my first
Oh, right.
dog.
Okay.
And I still have hers. And then I was placed with Fecto.
All right.
So
So this relationship, I mean, you're called Hugs on the trail, aren't
Hugs,
you?
yes.
That's your name. Why are you called Hugs, by the way?
So in 17, when I attempted my through hike, I was in a very bad spot, and I was pretty angry, and
Sure.
I needed something positive, so I gave myself hugs.
All right. How about dog? Cool. So how's it been for Fecto out here? And what difference has it made for you to get back on here? Because I know you're doing this for a purpose, aren't you?
Yes, I am trying to raise money for PAWS. I'm trying to give back to them what they have given me, a new life. And I'm trying to raise money for them
Right.
and help them out as much as possible. The organization is ran off of donations only,
Yeah.
and the great thing about the organization is that they pay for everything for the life of the dog. That includes vet, food, any kind of training care.
Sure.
The only thing I have to pay for is if I want to spoil the dog.
It's cool. It's
Yeah.
cool. So if people do want to help and help PAWS, what do they do to contribute to your cause?
You can go to paws.org, PAWWS.org,
Yeah.
and there's a donate button on there, and it's linked straight to the organization. Or you can go on my Facebook. You can follow me at Fecto and Hugs, all one word, and Fecto is spelled FECTEAU.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Oh, wow, that's a tough one, yeah. FECTEAU, yeah.
Yes. And then and Hugs, and
Yeah.
it's all one word.
Yeah.
And you can go on there, and there's a donation button, which links you to the actual website as well. So
Okay. Well, there's going to be a picture in the show notes of such a cool-looking dog. He's sitting there. It's like he's got his arms folded. I mean, he's so relaxed, and he really is so darn relaxed. You should have seen him clean the bowl earlier on. That was just amazing. And I just make a personal observation, which was that you just showed me a picture, a video rather, of you and Chicago TV, and you looked. Before you came on this trip, really, you looked nervous and withdrawn. You seemed so open and happy and friendly out here. It seems that the whole journey with Fecto and with your friends, obviously, that you're hiking with, Britta and Jimmy.
And Jim.
Yeah, it seems to have really helped you, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's the unique thing about at the trail and having Fecto. Like, when I'm out on the trail, it's weird. I feel normal. I get
Right.
sleep. I don't have my nightmares as much. I don't get migraines. And I mean, I feel like a normal person.
Right.
And it's great. I feel great out here.
Okay, man.
But
Well,
when I'm back at home, it's just total opposite.
I'm sure with Fecto's help, you're going to be fine.
Yes.
Okay, man.
And-
well, look, you say.
One last thing about Fecto. The unique thing about all the dogs at PAWS, they're named after fallen vets.
All right.
And Fecto is named after a CIA agent who
Right.
died in Vietnam. He was shot over China, And then,
Wow.
and then he was a POW and was killed over there. So,
Wow. Okay.
all the dogs' names are after fallen vets.
That is amazing. It's a beautiful. I mean, I'm not a dog fan because I've been bitten in the past, but I say he is a beautiful, beautiful dog, and I'm just so pleased to have met you out here, and I hope you really enjoy the rest of your journey.
It's my pleasure. Yeah, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Cheers. Day number 160, full goose shelter, mile 1915.1 to Grafton Notch, mile 1924.8, just a 9.7 mile day. But what a 9.7 miles it was. We were both exhausted by the end of this day. We were both excited before the beginning of the day. But sometimes a 9.7 mile day is worth a 20 mile day in another state. And this was a tough day. We were excited because today we were going to go through the Mahoosuc Notch, go up the Mahoosuc Arm, climb on Mount Speck. I mean, it was just an awesome day. Unfortunately, and we weren't looking forward to this, as I said, it rained the previous night. So I was thinking to myself, and I was a bit negative, and good old Triggy pulled me out of it and was much more positive. I thought, I'm going to die today. This is going to be a nightmare. It's going to be so darn tough. And I've actually reflected on this recently. I've spent a lot of my days through New Hampshire in fear of imminent death because some of the rocks, some of the climb downs have been so darn difficult and so dangerous. But this is what you come on the Appalachian Trail for. It is dangerous. And as I mentioned the other day about this article or a post in Facebook about how dangerous some of these things are, and they need some sort of way you can get around them. And I suppose having gone through the Notch now, I'm of the opinion that it is perfectly fair. We went through it in rain. But let me tell you about it anyway. We're awake early, as I say, and we headed off down towards the Notch, and you don't quite know you're in it until suddenly you get this boulder field, huge boulder field, and you just start trying to climb it, and it's like a massive granite jigsaw puzzle where you can make up your own route as you go along, and it involves hopping sometimes from one rock to another. And funnily enough, I always felt in the Notch this time, I felt very in control. And when I went last time, we took about 3 hours to get through, but I think we had lunch in the middle of it. And Trig and I took an hour and 3/4, maybe 2 hours. But you know what? So what? It was it's an extraordinary place to be. You go down quite low into this what do you call it? What's the word? Ravine, I guess. Where literally the rocks or the boulders have fallen from above, and it's 15 degrees cooler. We actually saw some ice down the bottom where the sun never shines at all, and it was just exciting. They give you some white painted arrows to give you some directions, but frankly, you can go whichever way you prefer. And we were hanging on to roots, hanging on to trees, hanging on by our fingertips to rocks, and just about making it over them. Trigger took a terrible fall, and no, he's okay, but he fell. He went backwards, and I thought, oh my gosh, he could go off here, but he didn't, and he was shaken up by it. And I think that's what it happens to me when if I fall, I get shaken up. It depends upon how bad the fall was. Depends upon how shaken up I am, I guess. But after this period of time, hour and a half, hour and 3/4 of taking our backpacks off and shoving them through a small gap, which before I lost all this weight, I wouldn't have been able to get through. It's exciting, and don't ever let anybody put you off doing it. It was dangerous. There was potential for killing yourself, but I didn't, and I got through to the end of it, and I'm thoroughly pleased with myself. I didn't fall or anything like that, and I really enjoyed it. But after the Notch, there's the Arm. And the Arm is one big climb. I can't remember how many feet it is, but it's tough, really, really tough as well. And lots of scrambling up. And as I say, there was wet rock. I prefer going up wet rock than down wet rock, and fortunately we were going up the arm, and so it is once again a bit of a boulder field in a lot of places. Very, very difficult to do, I think, but frankly, I would far prefer to go up the arm than go down it, and a lot of southbounders we spoke to said they'd really struggled with it as well. So we went up the arm, and then we were faced with Mount Speck, and there is a view. You got this view of Speck, and then you see lots of these open granite slabs, and you think, have I got to climb up that? And you have. You keep getting closer and closer to it, and we started climbing up, and it got steeper and steeper, and the wind got up, and it was about 40-mile-an-hour winds, really, really blowing us, and Trig was a little bit concerned about it, but it was magnificent. It was so exciting. But then you get to the top. Actually, you don't quite get to the top of Speck. You suddenly cut off and go a different direction, down from Speck. And I ran into a guy called Kyle Miller. He's a listener, and he's apparently a big fan of the show, which is rather nice. And he chatted with us for ages. He said, that the show has inspired him to do this hike. So I felt, quite touched by that. Really nice fella, Carl. And he headed off because he was far faster hiker than us. He's going to do this in 4 months. So we had this long climb down, and I'll recall coming down to Grafton Notch last time. Man, it goes on, this climb. But we got down there, and I didn't fall all day, which is amazing for me. And at Grafton Notch, a woman gave me a Moxie. A Moxie is a drink I'd never had before. And Gary and Cathy, if you recall, I showed you a picture of a sandwich they suggested for me, which was peanut butter and dill pickle. Well, they said the only other thing you need is a Moxie. Well, I've now had a Moxie, Gary and Cathy. Then we met a guy called Eric, who was cooking burgers and dogs. His son's hiking the trail right now, and he knows how to cook. I mean, these burgers were top notch. So we sat around chatting, and Kyle, Kyle Miller, the guy who was a listener, was there as well. We were just talking and so on. And we said we're trying to get into Bethel, a place called the Inn at Roste. And Eric said, I'll give you a lift. So we did. He's got a ski home down in Bethel. Took us right past the Inn at Roste, took us in there. Excellent. Good place. Really nice place to stay. And guess what is just up the road? We wanted something to eat. There is a British pub, which of course looks nothing like a British pub. But it was run by this wonderful woman called Amanda. She knew her stuff, and Trigger treated himself to a dirty martini, which is my favourite drink. He had one himself, and I didn't have one. A dirty martini. And she knew, I said, I think she knows what she's doing. And she did. And she made a great dirty martini. We had British fare, as they called it, beef Wellington, which is basically a couple of slabs of fillet in puff pastry. Very nice indeed. Lots of vegetables. Really enjoyed it. It was an excellent day. It was just exciting. It was what hiking, I guess, in Maine's all about. And I at last feel back to my best. So that is the end of day number 160. So we've reached Grafton Notch. Well, I'm actually a day past Grafton Notch, but you'll have to wait until next time to see how that went. However, if you've been listening closely, and listen how quiet this is now. You've heard the bullfrogs, and how content that I must sound, just sitting here on a pond with nobody else around, Triggers in his tent, my tent set up. It's getting darker. Still no moose in the lake, but few people see this. Really few people see this. This is a really glorious spot to record an episode, and not for the first time in this trip. I feel very, very privileged indeed. I'll see you next time.